Welcome to the Provider's Report, where we delve into the world of value-based healthcare. Our mission is to empower healthcare providers with the knowledge and tools they need to deliver exceptional patient care. Each episode, we explore best practices, innovative strategies, and real-world examples of how to achieve the highest standards in patient communication and outcomes. Join us as we transform the future of healthcare, one conversation at a time.
Hey guys, welcome to Better Doctor Project, where we interview healthcare providers to tap into their experiences so we can turn our challenges into our biggest strengths. We hope today's episode inspires you to take that next step to become who you want to be in practice. I'm Dr. Beck.
And I'm Dr. Mack.
Let's get started.
Hey guys, Dr. Mack here. Today we're exploring the unique topic of our relationship with food. Even though when you break it down, it's simply the building blocks for our bodies, human relationships with food are not that simple. Most of our patients don't eat what they truly need to fuel them, and often food choices have strong emotional components. Because of this, it's so important to approach these conversations confidently but delicately in order to better understand how your patients perceive their relationships with food and their bodies. Some may feel impulsive or resentful after they eat, and thus they may think negatively about the topic of food. Some classify their eating habits in ways you wouldn't expect, and they have their own expectations about what is good or bad when it comes to nutrition. Many patients may have had a rocky history with eating disorders or conditioned responses to food, and sometimes it can be really tough to know what to do when these topics come to light. These complexities can greatly impact the ease with which you and your patients approach communication about nutrition. In order to help us determine a way to navigate these conversations gracefully, Dr. Kristina von Castel-Dunwoody has joined us again to bring to the table her experiences and approach as a registered dietitian to help you and your patients achieve great outcomes. Time to feast on some knowledge, so bon appetit, let's eat.
Kristina, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate you being here today.
Thank you. I'm excited to be a part of the conversation.
Food is very special because it really has a strong emotional connection. And I think that's something really important to touch on, especially when it comes to patients that have any kind of eating disorder. There's a totally different emotional connection with food and with their bodies. So for our providers who might just be diving into this and beginning to talk about weight and nutrition with their patients, what are some things we can look for in the history of a patient or in our discussion that might tip us off that the patient may have an unhealthy or toxic relationship with food, so that we can get an appropriate mental health care professional on board to help them accomplish their goals?
Yes, that's a great question. So it is a very sensitive concept. I do find some folks will just straight out tell you, I've been challenged by an eating disorder, I've had an eating disorder. I try to cater my language appropriately. I like to use words like the word challenge. I know, have you any challenges with food? I build some of my food questions into various things. So I asked, do you restrict foods for any reason, such as personal, ethical, religious reasons? Do you have any food allergies? So I list all of them. And if I throw them off by saying that too fast, I'm like, well, for example, are there any reasons for your faith that you might not eat a food? Or are you allergic to a food? Or is there any food that you feel you can't eat? If I got the coolest chef on the planet to show up at your door and hand you a plate, what on that plate would you absolutely not be able to or not want to eat? So that lets me dive into multiple reasons. It softens it a little bit because it's built into showing them there's lots of reasons someone might not choose to eat a certain food. Ask them, if they've lost significant weight or gained significant weight in the past. There are some intake forms early on that would ask, have you ever had an eating disorder? I typically don't ask it that way. I do sort of ask, have you ever had any challenges with food? Tell me a little bit about your food history. When I'm broad about it and I kind of put little pieces into there, so I build it into, is there any reason you restrict a food? What is your food history? Tell me a little bit about what your food history is like. What are your health goals? It will usually leak out somehow. So I've had athletes where it leaked out that they feel that they can't get over a certain weight because they won't be able to run. and I've had it leaked out. Actually, just literally, I think a lot more people come out and just say it. Yeah.
I like that word change. I've never thought about that. And I think that's a really nice way to take a sensitive topic and make it approachable. And it has a less negative connotation as well, because you want them to open up to you. And just that simple change with that word challenge, I really like that.
Yeah. And that's something I've worked a lot of years on, is my language that I use in the words. Like, my hardest one to avoid is try. We don't use the word try. We're going to do this. We're going to do an experiment this week and see if this works, instead of try.
I like that.
And that way it's not like, it's whether you believe you can't do something or you can't do something, you're right.
And I love that too, when you say that we're going to do this experiment, because with an experiment, it's either yes or no. It's one thing that happens or another thing that happens, or an array, right, of outcomes. But either way, whatever the outcome is, it's okay, because you've already accomplished the fact that you tried it, or not, I shouldn't say try, but that you did it, right? So I love that. I love that, because then there's no failure. You just did it, regardless of the outcome and what that means for your care going forward.
And that's the biggest thing. Nobody wants to fail. So find their success first. And then to let everyone know that they have been successful. And sometimes you get gold. Sometimes people think they're so hard on themselves, and you find out they've completely stopped drinking soda or caffeine if they have a heart condition. You're like, well, you've already done that. Wow, you're amazing. You're already doing this. So finding that little snippet, something they can already do, turning the language around. So if they had a goal that we set and they say, oh, I did not walk 5 days this week, I only walked 3. Well, last week you walked 1, so you're telling me you walked 2 more days than you did before? That's awesome. So any little thing, they showed up. They still came. They did something. So trying to stay positive with it, trying to kind of be that support system. And, for like eating disorders, maybe it doesn't come out right away. Maybe it comes out a little bit later. And there's a pretty broad array of eating disorder and what they can be. So trying to figure out, is it something where we do need a mental health professional to get involved? People like to use the word binge loosely as well. So I have some folks that say, oh, I just binged so bad, I had 3 cookies. Now, in their mind, that's a binge, and we might want to understand what's happening there and why they feel like 3 cookies is a binge. So I don't want to dismiss that, but then certainly we're not truly talking about what would be psychologically diagnosed as binge eating disorder.
That makes perfect sense.
For a lot of the providers listening, what would be a recommendation on the pathway referral? So let's say we finally do, realize which patient needs this kind of intervention. Should we send them directly to a dietitian? Should we send them directly back to their primary care physician? Is there like a protocol that tends to work better for better outcomes?
It will depend to some extent. Insurance is a factor for people. So they might have to go back to the primary care. They might be able to refer straight to a dietitian. So having a list of either dietitians or psychologists, depending on what the issue is, that work specifically with eating disorders. Not all dietitians do that. It's not something I will do with folks. I don't feel that I have enough experience with that. I don't see enough people every day to dive into that. I actually feel strongly for the future education model that folks that want to work in eating disorders should get a compound degree in psychology and dietetics license together. So if they have both, they can touch on both, because there's so much mental health behind it. A lot of times it's body image, but it might not be. It might be about control. It might be a substance abuse concern. Alcohol might be also involved. So it dives deep. So I'd find out kind of what the bigger picture is, know what referral resources you have, and sometimes you will have a very frank conversation. Are you ready to restore your relationship with food? This is going to be important for your long-term health. This could be affecting, for women, your fertility. This could be affecting, for men, your fertility. This could be affecting your long-term health. Are you ready to have a better relationship with food? I have someone that would love to support and help you.
Very good.
You touched on insurance there a little bit, right? That they may have to go back to their primary. And I know earlier we talked about that and how insurance kind of focuses, right, their outcome assessments more on weight loss.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any outcome assessments for us as providers that you like to use to help you assess truly where a patient is at? Because I know sometimes, and the same goes for pain, right? Stuff Dr. Beck and I deal with every day. When you're in pain, it's hard to remember what it was like when you're out of pain. And when you're out of pain, it's hard to remember exactly where you were when you were in pain. So outcome assessments for us are really, really important. What are some that you like to use to help you with your patients?
So I like to use their most significant disease state. So if the most uncontrolled state is the diabetes, it's going to be their blood sugar and their A1C. And I like to look at both, their glucose and their A1C. If it's cholesterol, I want to look at their full lipid panel. So I want to know their LDL, total cholesterol, and their triglycerides. By looking at all three, I have a better idea of what's going on. Is it just the LDL lipoprotein that's elevated? Is it the triglycerides? You can have low triglycerides and high LDL. That might be something different happening there. If they have hypertension, blood pressure, if they have kidney disease, definitely. Actually, there's even some research that shows people that are heavier on dialysis do better. Now, I don't work in the dialysis clinic. I would refer to that dietitian. That's a very, very specific group of people. But pre-dialysis, we do need to be super careful what they might do because their bodies are so sensitive. So I'm going to look at their creatinine and their renal function, look at their GFR. I would rather the actual blood measure that relates to their disease be the marker. So if you're going to pay for me to do diabetes intervention, weight shouldn't be the factor. Yes, that could be part of that. It should be glucose and A1C. So if I get your glucose and A1C under control, we've improved the situation. Hypertension, same thing. If we can get your blood pressure under control, now you could argue, well, you just put them on a medication. But could the goal be lowest dose possible medication or even coming off that medication, and you can still provide for that? Weight is not, it's definitely a part of the picture. BMI is a very vague number. It's not as good as we think. I wish there was another number we use clinically. You kind of can. You can look at weight, waist circumference, and comorbidities, and then they get a better idea. Because like our football linebackers are all going to be considered obese, but they need to be they need to be where they're at.
Yeah.
You can have thin people who are, don't have great health care, people that are are what we consider a normal weight, BMI, and they have uncontrolled diabetes. And so actually even heard of someone who was a young adult, had uncontrolled diabetes, didn't know it, wasn't overweight, no one ever thought there was anything wrong with him, and that person passed away from their diabetes. So we need to look at the condition itself. Blood work is my passion. I wish everyone would just get blood work every year. Know where we're at, know where our baseline is, know what's right for us. There's arguments that some of those measures are wider than we think they are. I got my PhD looking at B12 metabolism. So the array of B12, if you look at the lab, it goes down to 200. I think you need to be over 400. If you're not over 400, we can see symptomology. So little things like that. If I don't have a baseline, I don't know what I'm working with. And so I definitely see a lot of people not getting blood work done, not having any of that stuff done, and using external measures, which aren't giving us the full picture. So I would dive into which one of those we needed to see.
That's a great point.
I love how clear that is too, because working in a profession like mine, we kind of have to marry subjective and objective findings, right? So we can utilize lab work, we can utilize orthopedic testing, muscle grading, but there's a component of pain for us too that is so subjective. Yeah. Are there any subjective assessments that you use, or do you rely mostly on those objective labs?
There are. So how you're feeling, energy level, fatigue. So definitely hypoglycemic events. Are you weak? Are you unstable? So I have patients that are weak and unstable because of something else. So we have to find out, are you more weak and more unstable because you had a hypoglycemic event? Certainly we can know someone's in trouble if they're having things like blurred vision and diabetes, then we're way out of line. But what is blurred vision? Do I have blurred vision because my vision's going out or because of something else? So sometimes you have to pick through those. Pain's another big one. So if I'm working with someone that says, oh, I have so much joint pain, the doctor wants me to lose weight, so I'll have less joint pain. That can be subjective, how much pain. I work with patients who do even talk about pain and are on pain medications, and I see that they are, but then they talk about they went to the gym. So what's that relative pain level? So kind of getting into that. And I don't want to poo-poo everyone's relative pain level either. actually the most subjective thing about nutrition is the dietary recall, is what are you eating? And when you talk to a lot of people, old school thing is they underreport, they're not telling you. And that I still hear that. And sometimes I don't know. It's just like, how could they not be? It's just too far away from what is possible. So something else must be going on here. And I think there's multiple things going on here. So pulling that out, I have different tricks to pull that out. And, I definitely have people that tell me they eat one meal a day, they hardly eat. And when I find out what they ate, it was 1,500 calories. Okay, answer, problem solved. We know what it was. And others who just don't. And I think something's happened where there is a shift. When we get to a certain size, our body is going to want to fight losing weight. Normally, our body losing weight is famine. It's bad. It's not okay. Our body doesn't have a signal that says, I'm this much overweight. It's okay to lose it now. It just sees weight loss as a negative. And so metabolically, we're going to fight that weight loss. So kind of knowing what may have gotten someone to that point, and now they're sedentary and in pain, and there's huge cortisol levels, and they're not feeling well, and they can't walk. They might be eating 1,000 calories and they can't lose weight. So what do you do then? We can't get nutrition in without under 1,000 calories. So figuring out what's happening with their nutrition is probably the most subjective part, without literally following them with a camera. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, even though that's a really good point that the subjective data is still so valuable. If you didn't do your dietary recall, you're going to be missing a lot of key information. And the same thing in our field with the musculoskeletal health, although it is unfortunate to have so much subjective data, it pays off because we learn so much from it. This is kind of on a total side note, but do you have any apps that you like your patients to use for dietary recall?
I do. I have one that I use. It's called Chronometer.
Yes, I love that one.
And I like it because it has a portal. So that's a bonus to coming to me. I have purchased the license and they get the free gold version.
Nice.
And so I can some notes to them. What I like about it is you can look at what their breakfast, lunch, and dinner was. You can know what their macros were, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. That's huge for my kidney disease patients. So I can see they didn't have too much protein. And so I like at least to use that for a short while. I know we talked about eating disorders. Some dietitians feel that can lead to disordered eating. Any kind of restriction leads to disordered eating. But if we use it carefully and we use it in that capacity, I feel like it can be useful. Mm-hmm. And I never force anybody to do it long term.
I do mention that one because my clinical nutrition professor in grad school, she is a genius, first off, but she got her PhD in organic chemistry studying coffee and chocolate. So already you can tell how incredible she is because that's what she got her PhD in. But she swears by that app, and we actually utilized it for a lot of projects for that class. And so it's really nice to hear that that's being used in the real clinical world. So
yes.
Other than using those apps and maybe taking notes and just becoming more aware of their body, are there any little small changes that most people would benefit from if they were told to do so by their providers?
I think, if you look at all the diets, so if we look at all these diets that are out there, there's a lot of fad diets and ways of eating. They all have one common denominator, and it's vegetables. It doesn't mean you have to eat all of them. So maybe with the benefits to, some of these diets, and I won't pick anyone out because, everyone gets super passionate about their diets. I actually taught a course called Coursera, and I had 50,000 students from across the globe in this course. It was totally automated, but there was a notes section and you could chat back and forth. So I know how political nutrition can get. But the common denominator I see is plants. No matter if you eat only plants, if you go hunt and eat venison, or if you go to McDonald's and, hunt the burger there, more plants. So, my premise of my plate is a little different than the USDA's plate, I will confess. I say half of your plate vegetables. Because if we aim for half and it's not half, I didn't aim for a quarter of my plate vegetables. I aimed for half of it. So it's more in line with the diabetes plate because I generally know most of my patients aren't going to quite get there. So I overshoot for them.
Sure. I like that.
Yeah. So I use that. I put the proteins in like we do. The proteins fit in with everything. So beans, legumes, meats of all types, fish of all types, eggs, they all fit on that one. And then our starchy foods, so that would be our grains or our potatoes or corn, all of our more starchy foods, go in another section. And I try to actually teach people what a carbohydrate is, because it's either sugar, starch, or fiber. It is not pasta. Pasta is within that category, but there's lots of great carbohydrates. Kale is a carbohydrate as well. So, carbohydrates aren't going to murder us in our sleep. But excessive amounts of anything could be bad. If we ate nothing but, butter, that probably wouldn't be a good situation either. So, there's balance there. I think is the biggest thing, looking for those vegetables. So you can get a salad, like the part of town I work in, Zaxby's is a big one. Zaxby's has a salad. We found out, my patient found out his little snack thing that he was ordering was 3 times the amount of calories than if he had just gotten a chicken salad. And so it was bigger, like he got way more food, and he got half his plate vegetables. My joke is, if you want to eat an entire large pizza yourself, that's fine. I want you to eat that same size salad beforehand, though.
I love it.
So you can have the whole pizza, just have the salad first. So it's more about, what do I get to eat versus what can't I eat? And knowing that those things give you more value. They don't take from you, they give to you. They have the vitamins and the nutrients, and yes, they can be challenging to get, but the more ways you can find to get them or grow them yourself, find farm shares. There's a lot of people out there that are trying to make a difference to get fruits and vegetables to everyone. If we could get those, I think that would be the biggest message, and being part of that movement to get them to everyone. It doesn't mean you have to take the other things off your plate necessarily. But if we fill up on those, we can see a lot more benefit.
I love how passionate you are about everything. It's so exciting. No wonder you have such success with your patients, because I'm sure they just feel it as soon as they start talking to you, which is awesome. So just tell me, what's your favorite thing about being a registered dietitian? What do you love about what you do?
I just love helping people. And so, I can share too. I've worn many hats. So for the students that are listening to, I had a crazy journey. I started this road as an art major. I was a photography major for 3 years, and worked a lot in graphic design as well. And I have a horse farm, so I was really annoyed whenever I didn't know what was wrong with my animals. And so I thought, you know what, I can just do art as a hobby, because I like taking nature pictures anyway. And I usually got I got picked on because my art wasn't artsy enough at that time. It's like, why are you taking a picture of a duck? Because I thought it was cool that I got 5 feet from a duck and took its picture. I thought that was cool. So I changed my vocation and my avocation and went into animal nutrition. At the time, animal nutrition, at least here where I went to school, was very production oriented, performance oriented. And I wanted to look at food as medicine for animals. And being young, I was terrified of moving to California, that's where it all was all happening. So I didn't move. I graduated with a animal nutrition degree. Started working, looked for nutrition jobs, did not quite understand that nutritional science wasn't dietetics, jumped in, got my PhD in nutritional sciences. But I appreciate the journey, because I take all of those things, my art, my understanding of animal nutrition. So I can tell you why the beef has a different nutrition profile than venison. Talk to people about the meat that we eat and why that comes out. Talk about nutritional science and the biochemistry of vitamin B12 metabolism. But my passion is talking to the person. So we talked a little bit about research. I love research. It's awesome. I don't want to do it. I want someone else to do it and tell me what they found. And then I will let people know what that meant.
Yes.
I like explaining, I heard on the news that vitamins really weren't good for you, because they said, the food's more important. I'm like, yes, if you live on nothing but Twinkies and a multivitamin, that's not great. That's where that study came from. So looking at the science, what did that study say? What does it look at? How do we look at it critically? What kind of population was this in? Did they look at the correct population? Taking that information, being the translator, being the person that can bring it to the everyday person, helping people, or at least trying to. And if not ready for it, that's fine. That's good. But I'm here. They know I'm here. And then I guess as a dietitian, also educating students. So anytime I get to mentor, that's something I still want to do, even though I'm not teaching students anymore. I want to mentor them and, touch the ones that, impact the ones that want to be impacted in that way. If they don't like my style, that's cool. That's fine. You can find a different style somewhere else. Totally. We can all respect one another. And that's what I try to do with my patients, with my peers, with practitioners, is to have mutual respect, try to understand, what are you bringing to the table? Is there some piece of that I can take from there? Is there some piece that I don't necessarily like? Sure, that's okay too. So I love being able to be that person. I've forever in my life been the mediator. So I guess I just play in on the fact that I'm good at being the mediator.
Well, I can guarantee that all of this amazing information you've given us today is going to be well used among many more healthcare providers. So we cannot thank you enough. And I just kind of wanted to end with this last question. For anyone listening who maybe weight loss is literally not even on their radar, whether it's just so far in left field compared to the field that they're in right now, if they just don't even think about it, but maybe they're listening to this and they're thinking, maybe I should at least start somewhere. Maybe I should start asking 1 or 2 questions on my patient intake form. Maybe I should start diving into this part of healthcare with my patients. Where should they start? I mean, where is the bare minimum that will make enough difference where someone could just really start today making this part of their practice?
I think asking the question, if we talk about weight loss or anything that's going to be related to the food component of weight loss, is how hard is your food working for you? Is it serving you or is it stealing from you? And so whatever, outcome that might be related to, if that's weight, if that's something else, what is your food doing for you? So I think you could start with not judging and asking a question like, so tell me about what kind of foods you enjoy eating. Let's look at how that might be, have a relationship with your health today. How do you feel about that? Tell me what you enjoy. And just starting from there and seeing if there's some component of their diet or their nutrition that could be shifted in a way that might be more beneficial to the goals that they showed up to you for. They showed up, they came there for a reason. So if they don't want to change, they obviously want to change something because they showed up.
I think just that one question to them encompasses really the basic parts of everything we've talked about today. It's meeting them where they're at, choosing your wording carefully, and finding the right time to introduce that idea, and then letting them think about it, right? And stew on it for a little bit.
Yep.
That's awesome. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Kristina. We really, really appreciate you meeting us where we are at today and sharing all this information. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey all, Dr. Beck here. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Better Doctor Project. Today was take 2 with Kristina, a registered dietitian, where we chatted all about how to meet our patients where they're at to reach their health goals when it comes to food and diet. Don't forget, we also had her on for episode 2 way back when for our big launch in June, where she dove into how to discuss the super, super delicate topic of weight loss with our patients. Between weight loss, eating disorders, self-confidence issues, body training dilemmas, all of these things can pop up in so many fields of healthcare as potential challenges. It is so worth it to take the time in some capacity, in some way, shape, or form, to just talk to our patients about these things. See if we can help them in any way. I think the most important takeaway here is realizing the benefit of having these difficult conversations, because you really don't know if it's being done elsewhere by other providers. Or maybe it's just simply an idea that they need to hear again. Maybe they've heard before that they need to do XYZ, but because they heard it for the 3rd time in your office, it finally became a reality for them. It finally became something they might want to try to do. In my opinion, that's worth it. As always, show notes with links to everything mentioned in today's episode are ready to go for you at betterdoctorproject.com. Take a look at episode 2 if you haven't already to make sure you're all caught up with all things Kristina and Better Doctor Project. See you guys in 2 weeks.
We loved connecting with you today on this episode of the Better Doctor Project. We can't wait to share our next podcast with you in just 2 weeks. Same time, same place. Until then, pop over to Instagram to follow us at Better Doctor Project or keep up with us at betterdoctorproject.com.
Thank you for tuning in to the Provider's Report. We hope you found today's episode valuable and inspiring. To stay updated with our latest episodes, subscribe to our podcast wherever you like to listen. For more resources and continuing education opportunities, visit our website. Together, we can make a difference in the lives of our patients and truly set a standard for value-based healthcare.